Welcome back to the book of Daniel. And today I promise I'll try to make it not as long as it was yesterday. But yeah, I thought it was really very interesting how this book has just sort of evolved. So, this chapter 4, is a letter written by King Nebuchadnezzar recounting a time when God humbled him and then later restored him. Now, what I loved was the end, where he praised Yahweh as the God, the Most High God, and acknowledged him as the King of Heaven. That was at the end of this. That was in chapter 4, verse 37. And it all started when he had the dream about the tree. And obviously, you read it. It was a tree flourishing. Then a voice came and said, "Cut down this tree." And then he couldn't interpret it as could not also. I'm sorry, I don't even know what I was trying to say there, but I don't understand how I was constructing that grammar. But obviously, his magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and co also couldn't interpret the dream, and then he called for Daniel. Now, I don't understand why he didn't just call for Daniel. I found it very interesting because this situation is no fresh, right? Remember the dream about the statues and how that played out. So why did he call those ones first, knowing fully well that only Daniel would have been able to, because I'm sure he knew. So maybe he was testing them, or maybe he was being a bit belligerent, or this is what I thought about. This was God's second sort of dream, giving him a dream for the second time. And I was reminded of that thing where, where it says that in the mouth of two witnesses, or two or three witnesses, a matter is established. And obviously there's a pattern of God like repeating himself, especially more than twice, or twice at the very least, to say something. So I have a feeling at the back of his mind, he knew kind of, but he just, waited before he called Daniel. And Daniel came in, obviously, and interpreted the dream. And it took 12 months for this dream to come to pass. I have a feeling that maybe he probably repented during the first time. You know how when you hear a prophecy or you hear something, it's like, oh, so scary, and you're good. And then after a while, it's like, yeah. And that's the thing. This happens usually. And I'm speaking from personal experience. When I try behavioral modification, okay, I think I can. Oh, I should. Instead of inviting God into the situation and asking him to deal with it. So Nebuchadnezzar probably thought, oh, he was probably sober for the first couple months or whatever, and then after that he did what he did, and God struck him with madness. And I think it's also very important to document your dreams. If you are one of the people that the Lord speaks to in dreams, or even if you get prophecy, document them, go back. It will always keep it top of mind for you, because it's very easy to just forget the words that you have heard and just carry on. But the thing is, God's words never fail. If he has spoken it, it will happen. It doesn't matter how long it takes, it will happen. Now, Nebuchadnezzar's period of madness lasted for about 7 years, after which God restored him. And that was the end of it. Now, in chapter 5, we now see Belshazzar, the king at the time, who they said should be his grandson, not his, just because of the timeline. And he either didn't learn from Nebuchadnezzar's mistake, because I wasn't sure. I was inclined to think that he didn't learn, or was it like, oh, he didn't know? But I was like, Nebuchadnezzar was such a big king, such a huge part of the Assyrians, or the Babylonians at the time, so his history would have probably been strong. So either this one was kind of removed from the situation, didn't care, didn't know, I don't know, but just like the unfolding of events with his grandpa, he called Daniel and refused to repent. And quite contrary to Nebuchadnezzar, he didn't even have a period of punishment. His was just instant death. By the way, that phrase, the handwriting on the wall, apparently came from this chapter, this book, because of the handwriting on the wall. I thought that was very interesting. But another thing that struck out to me was Daniel's interaction with this king. For me, it was very obvious that he didn't like him. I could just immediately tell that he didn't like him. Even when the king says, oh, you'll be the third brother, he's like, you know what, keep your gifts. I don't need them, but I will interpret. And then also, Daniel is much older now, so I have a feeling that maybe with wisdom, and maybe he has seen too many things go down. Obviously, he saw Nebuchadnezzar and how he ended up, and then you know, seeing the same guy go down the same route. She's like, yeah, whatever. So I didn't see the same. There was humility and all, but I didn't see the same sort of reverence that he had. I mean, remember when he went to Nebuchadnezzar, oh king, live forever, blah blah. This guy, he just told him what it was, and I'm sure in his mind is like, I'm sure you're going to do what you need to do, but yeah, be safe out there. So, but I mean, Daniel. Let's talk about Daniel. Daniel's excellence just transcended kingdoms and kings, because there was this one king, Nebuchadnezzar, then this one obviously who knew him at the end of his life, and then obviously Persia took over, and King Cyrus also, you know, brought Daniel into his ruling council or whatever, and obviously this incited jealousy among these other people. And his ethnicity, obviously, I think also, because like, oh, who is this Jew amongst these other, because they still kept calling him the exile, the exile. This is like almost 80 years. I mean, how old was he? And it's the exile, the exile. So the people in his fellow administration, and I'm sure, weren't too fond of him, because of his excellence and, you know, the way God had differentiated him. And their jealousy ended up being the reason why he was thrown into the lion's den. And it was, yeah, he was supposedly about 86 years old when he was thrown into the lion's den. So imagine how, so he wasn't even a young man. So there was really nothing he could have even done with his power. And I believe that this is how God really shows up and shows his might. Because an old guy, how are you going to like struggle with a lion? So it was like, you know what, I will save him and they will know that it is me. And I just thought that was amazing. And you know, Daniel just always he was consistent in prayer. That was why they were able to get him, because they knew that if they say don't pray, Daniel will still pray. And that's what I learned about God. God actually responds to our prayers. He responds to the battles that we fight in the place of prayer. This is just all very evident from how the story of Daniel panned out. Daniel didn't stop praying even at the threat of death. You know, he obviously had made prayer his life, because those guys knew that that's the only way we are ever going to get him. He went by the book. He was righteous above standard. So they knew that the only way we will get him is through prayer. And in chapter 6, verse 16, it says, so the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. Then the king said to Daniel, may your God, who you serve, continuously rescue you. And guess what? He did. And that's the same God that we serve. How amazing is that? Thank you for joining me today. Really excited about this book. Looking forward to sharing more with you tomorrow. See you then. God bless. Bye.